sat down, I remember sitting down with John in my music room in London, up at the top of my house, where we'd write often. And I remember sitting down and said, I've got this idea, you know, for a song. So we were kind of jamming on it. I said, it's getting better all the time. He went, it couldn't get much worse. Okay, now we're off.
One of the things that made the Lennon-McCartney team so formidable is how well they played off one another. Paul using this happy, jolly hook, it's getting better all the time, and John Lennon completely balancing it with this dismal response, it can't get no worse. I love to imagine what kind of other situations John would find a way to be hilariously negative about. But as Paul expresses, he loved to write optimistic music to cheer himself up, and knowing that we would all be listening to it too, to cheer us up as well. In a way, John used it too to express some regret he had for his past self. He says, "I am a violent man who has learned not to be violent and regrets his violence." And he goes on to immortalize that sentiment and regret in the song with, "Man, I was mean, but I'm changing my scene and I'm doing the best that I can." The actual phrase, "it's getting better all the time," is credited to Jimmy Nicol, who stood in for Ringo as a drummer for about a week while Ringo was hospitalized with tonsillitis. Whenever Jimmy was asked, "How are you getting on performing with the Beatles?" he would usually respond with, "It's getting better," which lingered with Paul till he eventually used it a few years later in this song. Paul says he sat down at his piano, which had all of these amazing, vibrant colors, and opened up the lid, releasing, as he puts it, this lovely sound. He said there was a magic tone, almost out of tune. And now, speaking of magic and things being a little out of tune, John steps away from recording Getting Better to take an upper. But it wasn't an upper. It was acid. He became terrified of the microphone. George Martin takes John to the roof to get some fresh air. John looks at the stars and says, "Aren't they fantastic?" George says, "They look just like ordinary stars to me, but to John, they must have been especially fantastic."